Part of being aware is being able to distinguish between the spiritual reality and the physical illusion. You see, if you don't do that, then you're going to be stuck in this prism. You're going to be stuck in the tricks of the material world, the matrix. You see, in the word materialism, mater, M-A-T-E-R, means mother, and alism means to consume, or like cannibalism. You see, so materialism, the word itself actually means the destruction of the female principle, which is the subjective realm, which means that since the subjective realm has been destroyed, therefore I subscribe to the objective realm, which is masculine. Therefore, by virtue of it, it would suppress women automatically in society because the value system is of the object. So women vote and subscribe to the axiology of the object, therefore they actually acquiesce and actually forfeit their own value system by subscribing to the very values of the objective reality. See? So they're oppressing themselves and they're participating in their own oppression.
Pause. What's up, Dr. Tao?
What's going on? We're having a good time, right?
Yeah, we're having a good time.
Yeah. My name is Tao Kamisi Mkweli. People call me Tao or Dr. Tao for short, but my first name is Tao Kamisi. It means the courageous bringer of truth who expands the mind. So I am a certified holistic practitioner. I'm trying to repair our culture as much as possible. And I guess I can say I'm an herbalist. There's a lot of things people may put on me, but for me, I'm just a person who enjoys to seek to understand and try to use that understanding to help people. So I've always been kind of into science and math and also art too, because I'm ambidextrous. I was born left-handed. I became right-handed later on.
How did that happen?
It was forced on me. My father put a sock on my left hand growing up, so I wouldn't use it. I ended up becoming right-handed and left-handed, so people study the brain, how that kind of cross-wire things. And so I can be analytical, also artistic at the same time. So you can kind of see the energy throughout the restaurant. It's very structured, but very artsy at the same time. So when I went to school, I studied the structural part of it. So I studied engineering, but I had to make it artsy, so I did architectural engineering. So, I mean, really it's just, just a person who just enjoys, nature and seeking and, just anything that has to do with information.
Right.
And I like to help people. Because usually I use myself as an experiment first, and then I help somebody with that. So
that's funny you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I want to touch on that in a minute. But you said repairing the culture. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Sure. So your culture is your norms, your values. It's your lens, how you see the world. The word nature and normal are political terms. You see. So what may be normal for someone else or natural for someone else is not necessarily natural for us. So just carving and going back, or we could call it Sankofa, going back and fetching back what's ours to bring it into the now. So the main thing is not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not trying to reestablish anything per se. We're just trying to repair or bring back to what was already established.
Right.
So you have to know your history to do that. But you may see the Eye of Haru.
Yeah.
What you're looking at is not necessarily just an eye by itself. That curl part at the bottom, that's a tongue. You see, and the part that goes down, that kind of wiggles like that, that's the part of the falcon's eye. And the tongue is the part of the aardvark. So people be like, well, why is it the aardvark tongue?
Yeah, what's the significance?
You see, and they say, okay, why is it a falcon eye thing going down like that?
Yeah.
Well, Seth represents the aardvark, you see. And when you look at the structure of the Eye of Haru, you'll see that the bottom part is the aardvark's tongue because that's your lower nature, you see. And the reason that Seth is an aardvark is because anteaters, another word for aardvark, anteaters, they tend to dig a lot of holes in the ground to find the ants to consume. And especially at nighttime, they're at their busiest, digging these holes. Mm-hmm. What they found is at nighttime, some of the people who will go for a walk, they will actually fall in these holes without knowing they're there. Mm-hmm. So what it represents is that you tend to fall into your lower nature during night. You see. So Seth represents the aardvark because he's the one who creates the traps. Mm-hmm. So we say he is set. So we say, who set me up? The Seth takes the eye of Haru and rips it out his eye, his skull. And when he rips it out his skull, he only has one eye. So he calls upon Jehudi, which represents wisdom, to restore his eye back, to put it back in. And that's what you call the eye of Haru. Wow. Now, to put the eye back in is no longer a physical thing. Yeah. It represents that your eye is now hidden in the pages of history. Define your eye is not necessarily an anatomical loss. It's more so a spiritual loss that you have to acquire through the rigor of studying and trying to seek back what is yours. Mm-hmm. And that's how we repair our culture, putting our third eye back in. So that's why that represents that.
I like how you brought all that back together.
You see. And the falcon eye, of course, that's going to be Haru himself. Right. You see. And that eye is actually the human eye. So you have the human eye, the falcon, and then the anteater, or the aardvark. So those are the three things amalgamated. When most people say that's the eye of Haru, well, it's a story behind why it's like that, you see. So that's part of repairing our culture. You see.
So what exactly is it going to take? Where do you feel like it starts? Repairing our culture, like our history, like knowing who we are. This, it's a lot of stories about where we come from, who was here first, all of those, all of these different theories. Essentially, where does it start? Okay. Where do you feel like it starts?
First, it starts with your value system, okay? So we could talk about we're from here, we're from there. What you'll see that's the common denominator is the axiologies, you see. And those axiologies, which is your value system, are going to be the same for the people who come from the same land, you see. So Europeans' highest value system is the object, you see. So that's their highest value system, of obtaining things and material objects. Native Americans is oneness with the Great Spirit, you see. Asians is cohesion of the group, or sticking together. And ours is the relationship and maintaining the relationship, you see. We don't like being disrespected, right? Yeah. So it's one of those type of things where you can kind of see how that culture is transmitted still. We may say that we're not, African, or you may say we're whatever. We get lost in those conversations a lot, but the axiology remains the same for melanated people, is that the relationship is the highest value. When someone is, talking about your mama, or, you know what I mean? For example, the reason why the relationship is so important for us is because say for example, I take a lady out for a date, and you buy her flowers and go to the movies and take her to dinner and go for a walk. You've done everything objectively correct. You see? Okay. Those are the objects, you see. Mm-hmm. So that's the highest value for the European. That's is the object, or the acquisition of the object. Mm-hmm. Which means either you have it or you don't have it, which creates an either-or system, which creates all the isms, you see, which means that you are right, or if you're right, you're wrong. If you're right, I'm wrong. So if I do everything objectively correct, then you say he loves me. Right. But however, someone could do everything objectively correct, but the intention is not there. You see, it's not wholesome. So the melanated mind had to create something very peculiar and unique in order to perceive if this object is of value. You see. So what the mind does, it creates a paradigm called intuition. And intuition is the ability to deceive or decipher truth right then and there, immediately. So that's why we put emphasis on the relationship, because see, if I say, okay, Renee, I got a car for you. Here you go. Here's a car. You don't know if it's stolen. You don't know if it's hot. You don't know where it's coming from. It has a savage title. You see, so the object for us was not of the highest value, because the object can come with certain stigmas and certain issues that you may not want to be associated with that object. You see, so this is why the relationship for us is so important, because for us, if you have food, you have shelter, you have clothing, everything in your geographical locale, then you don't have to put emphasis on material things, because the material things are already there. You see. So we can say we're from here. We can say we're from there, right? The truth is still the same. The axiology for our people, our melanated people, still remains the highest value is the relationship. I don't care where you're from.
So, okay, let's touch on this, because you're saying, the European way is of the object. Is that kind of where like this romanticism thing comes from?
It's all about deception. It's mainly about someone buying into an illusion, and then when they find out it's not, they find out it's an illusion, and they upset that it is an illusion. That's kind of like the energy of Gemini. Gemini is a sign that represents the cerebral energy, which has to distinguish between spiritual reality versus spiritual or material illusion. So the illusions of me liking you or caring about you is doing the right objective things. You see, I checked this out, I did that, I did this, I did that. Therefore, she should know that I love her. But she's like, hey, I don't feel like you love me though. You see, I don't feel like it. It doesn't matter if you do the right things. She has to feel it. You see what I'm saying? Sometimes you could be in a relationship, and if you do the right things, or you may not do everything objectively correct, but the intention is there. It could be a gift or a card you made from your, by hand, but she'll feel it. You see, because that's how the mind is constructed from our geographical locale. You see, so but yeah, romance is a part of that's a Eurocentric paradigm, and mostly, you see, I won't say mostly, like giving someone 12 roses and stuff like that, and 12, they call them orchards, and orchards is another word for testicles. Okay, so the man shows up with 12 of his testicles, and he gives them to the woman, and let's say, I don't want to follow this because I want to become conscious now, right? Because I know this means testicles, and I don't want to do this because the roses represents this. So the woman gets mad at the guy because you didn't give her flowers, right? So the black woman gets upset at the black man because he now becomes aware. So she throws him back into the loophole of what Western society is because of what she values. So we can only love each other as Europeans. You see? So I love the black woman as a white woman, and she loves the black man as a white man. And when I try to step out of that, her values that are still stuck in the system would throw me and make me, we call it guilt trip, back into the thing that I'm trying to get away from. So a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with is this residual effects of this post-slavery trauma. You see, we're dealing with a lot of issues. So when a man dates a woman, the woman knows that a cuter girl may come along, so she can't fully put all her trust into him. You see what I'm saying? So if that's the case, then she has to create what we call a secondary collateral relationship, which means she must find another guy who has resources that can possibly take care of her and the child, just in case don't go well. You see, so she can't fully put her trust in him. So what happens is the guy that she steps out with may not take care of her, so she has to use sex as collateral so that he'll feel obligated to do something for her. So they call that a secondary collateral relationship that she has to create based on the mistrust of the man and his loving of her. See, that's a value system distortion there, you see. So what happens is we have these things called adverse environmental feedbacks, you see. And that can be looked at as a natural ecological phenomena, but I also look at it as adverse environmental feedbacks as the defects of society that throw a feedback loop back to you to show you the defects of society, you see. So what happens is if romance is a unholistic ideology, then the relationship is, if it's based on that, can only be fragmented, you see, because it's based off the objective realm, you see. What happens is the objective realm is essentially your connection to a residual effect of the subjective realm. What I mean by that is the objective world is a shadow. It's responding to what's happening in spirit. So if my highest value is the object, then if I was to use a certain nomenclature to count, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then I would have to use something. If I was to count in time, I couldn't say first. I would have to say seconds. Because if I count in seconds, which means not first, that means that I look at time as a secondary experience. You see, so therefore Europeans count in seconds. They don't count in first. They say 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, which means that their axiology is connected to the objective realm. You see, this is why when someone adopts that value system of the objective reality, then everything that falls under it has to correspond to that culture. So the gold digger, the person who has the fancy shoes, the fancy car, the fancy clothes, all those will line up with European values. Therefore, they won't have dashiki, they won't have African, they won't have anything that's culturally centered because it's a different paradigm there. You see what I'm saying? So what we see as someone who's materialistic is essentially someone who has subscribed in totality to the European way. It's by nature, which means they have subscribed to the objective reality. And the word materialism, mater, M-A-T-E-R, means mother, and alism means to consume or to devour, or like cannibalism, you see. So materialism, the word itself actually means the destruction of the female principle, which is the subjective realm, which means that since the subjective realm has been destroyed, therefore I subscribe to the objective realm, which is masculine. Therefore, by virtue of it, it would suppress women automatically in society because the value system is of the object. So women vote and subscribe to the axiology of the object, therefore they actually acquiesce and actually forfeit their own value system by subscribing to the very values of the objective reality. See? So they're oppressing themselves and they're participating in their own oppression.
Pause. You touched on the fact that, a woman is going to look at things, or a lot of times Black women look at things in this European standard of, love and romance and things like that. Since we're on the topic of women, how do we fix that? Like, as women, like, how do we pull back? And I know, it will definitely touch on knowing who you are, but I just want to hear it in your words. Like, how do women fix that way of thinking?
Well, it's just subscribing to something different, really. I'll always say you can't serve two masters. So even if you subscribe to this, you're automatically pushing down and stepping on something that you may not be aware of. Say I were to try to take care of somebody. So I would go, they were sick, right? So I'll go buy them a pizza, right? And I go give them a hot dog and a burger, and I love you so much because you're sick. I got to do this for you because you need some food. I just said food. I didn't attach culture to it or anything. I just
Yeah.
said you need something to help you sustain, eating, and it had nothing to do with anything that had no lens, you see. So your culture is what creates your resistance to psychological impulses. And if that's not there, then you are going to be unaware of the very things that are going to attract you, you see. So first, it always starts with just knowing who you are. I know it sounds cliche, but it really just comes down to having that emotional vocabulary to express love to self.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you can't just say food, you can't just say clothing, you can't just say anything without attaching culture to it. So first do that first.
Right.
Because your culture is your vocabulary to express love to self. You see. So if my auntie's dying in the hospital, then I give her a hot dog and a hamburger. She may think that I'm loving her,
right,
but it was no culture attached to it. So therefore I can't properly love somebody without me having understanding of what it is in my culture. That's why I said the word natural and normal are political and social terms. Those are social definitions, you see. I always say our culture is nature. It's what is closest in nature, you see. So when you want to help somebody, you have to understand what paradigm I'm subscribing to help this person.
Right.
You see, am I going to give this person something that they want, or do I give them something they need? But their wants are connected to what? Their axiology. You see, so it takes the person as well to have the emotional muscle to pick up what you're giving to them. And that's what we call emotional muscle. You see, they have to be able to pick up that type of love or that type of care. So it takes a complete divorcing of what you were brought into, and you see that it's not working. You see that people are frustrated. You see mental illness. You see these things. So a brain at some point will say something is not right here. So it takes some type of compare and contrast. If you can't compare and contrast, then you can't see it.
Right.
If you think this is life and this is how it's supposed to be and everything's good and kumbaya, we're all one people, then then you see nothing wrong with the world, then that's you. Then that person is satisfied where they are. You leave that person alone. So it comes from the right questioning. We call that tep haseb, which means the correct thinking using the right method. You see, so they have to be able to think outside of what they're in before they can even think properly.
Okay.
Once the questions get going, then you can start making sense of, okay, well, what is mine? How are my people originally operating? What's our modus operandi? How do we function as a whole? And then you can start to connect that to culture. And you connect culture. Once you get the culture, then you can start using that for everything.
Right.
That's your laser beam to connect everything.
Right.
So it's like, you know what? I want my food back. Let me get that back. What's my food? Is it in Africa? Is it here? Are the Africans eating their food? Or are they eating food that's been given to them?
Right.
All right. That's food that's been given to them as well. All right. What's my clothing? Why is it called clothing? No, it's not. It's called sa. And sa means spiritual protection. So now I can't look at this clothing. Now it's not this clothing.
Right.
It's protecting my spirit, you see. So now I'm taking that back. So we call this is all Sankofa stuff I'm talking about. We're just taking stuff back from the past, bringing it to the future.
Okay. Okay.
So it was called the Great Ma'afa. The Ma'afa is the great mental and physical genocide of a people, essentially. And when you see that essentially Europeans are auto-genocidal, which means that they have their own end, meaning their behaviors have their own endpoint, meaning that the earth cannot sustain capitalism. That's what that means. And when you try to do that, you'll see that as time progresses, the planet gets sicker, people get sicker, and it produces more sickness. So people can't be sick in of themselves. They are a product of a sick environment that they're in. You see. So you start questioning everything. Like, okay, you know what? I don't want to be in this sick environment. I want to change my whole environment around me as much as possible. You see. And that's when you start getting back to who you were meant to be. And that's when you align with your purpose. And that's when things start to heal. And once that healing starts taking place, then you know you're on the right track.
Okay. So first, becoming aware.
Mm-hmm.
Like step one is awareness,
Mm-hmm.
and then being aware of your culture,
Mm-hmm.
and then attributing that to your everyday life, to
Exactly.
what you eat, to how you think,
Mm-hmm.
how you maintain relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So if we are so far taken back from our culture to a point where, I don't know, maybe we've kind of like Stockholm syndrome, like, a lot of us might be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
For those of us who are like, bumping heads with ourselves and how to break from this way of thinking to that way of thinking, because you said this before, you said,
Mm-hmm.
help me out. You was like, it's your ancestry
Ancestry,
versus
heritage.
your
Yeah,
heritage.
we're
Can you elaborate on that
yes.
some?
So today is more of a heritage conversation going on. People are claiming their heritage back, which is fine. I have no problem with people claiming their heritage. Um, so if you want to say your grandmother was from here and your great grandmother, that's fine. I mean, it's only a few generations, so that's not the blink of an eye. We're
Okay.
not talking about.
Okay, so we
So,
talking a few generations.
yeah, people get stuck on this. My grandma said I was from here, so she ain't lying.
She's not.
I'm sure she's not. That's
Right.
fine, and I agree with her.
Right.
I don't think she's lying either. So that's fine. But why are we fixated on one piece of the pie?
Okay.
That's the issue. You see, you want to claim the whole entire planet. You see. See.
Okay.
So we have 4 frequencies out here. We have first frequency, second, third, and fourth. So second frequency is the European. All right. So that's what we call the middle class and the elites. Um, nice house, suburbs. Third frequency would be our people. Um, not all our people, but some of our people, I'll say, or most. I'll say most of our people.
Okay.
That's your boule fraternity, sorority. I want to be a Negropean.
Okay.
I want to do whiteness with a black face.
Right. Okay.
You see, I want to put on the tuxedo, and I want to go to the Oscars and be nominated by them for being great. You see, that's third frequency. I want to go to their colleges, even HBCUs. I want to go to those schools and get that degree because that's important for the society. Because the degree is a work permit. You see, so they permit me to work in their society, and then get a diploma, which means to be diplomatic about it, right? So it means be hush hush about it. Be diplomatic, right?
Right.
And
Okay.
then the cap and gown, the hat's called a mortar head. So a mortar is a mason who builds a brick. So build society and shut up about it. Basically, that's what it's saying.
I'm following.
You see.
Gotcha.
And then fourth frequency is your more so Section 8, your more so they call it your degenerate black people who maybe can't read or write, or just more so they kind of just more so just not as educated, I guess you could say. So you have second, third, and fourth frequency. All right. So third frequency is trying to be like second frequency.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And fourth frequency doesn't. He's going to procure a route because he already doesn't want to be like Uncle Tom third frequency.
Right.
And he definitely doesn't want to be second frequency. So he wants to. Sometimes fourth frequency can swing to first frequency. And first frequency is who has stepped into their culture and expressing it.
Okay.
Now third frequency can also be African aware. They can be an Afrocologist, I'll say.
Okay.
But Afrocologist is different from Afrocentrism.
Okay.
You see, that's a different concept, meaning that all because I study my history or culture doesn't mean that I'm actually expressing it. I know about the pyramids. I know about Ramesses and Nefertiti and all that. I know all this stuff, right? But I don't do anything. I just still go to Starbucks and I still go to these banquets and but I know it though. Right? First frequency is you know who you are and you're expressing it. You're doing something with it. You see what I'm saying? So no matter if you claim you're from here or there, what are you doing with it?
Right.
You want to say you're indigenous. What are you doing? Where's your brick and mortar? Or what are you doing with it to repair instead of just talking? Most of it stuff is just a sound piece. Like I was saying last week, I was saying that average leaders have quotes. Mm-hmm. Good leaders have plans, but exceptional leaders have systems. Okay. So we have a lot of folks who got good quotes here. They talk all day, talk this, right? We not this, we this. Yeah, we not this, we this. Right? We
Right.
this, and they're gonna be in the comment section on here probably. And we not this. He
Right.
said we from. I mean, we're gonna hear this all day long, right? This
Right.
goes on
Facts.
and on
It
and on.
is what it is.
You see.
Right.
And then you have the ones we got a good plan. We should do this right here. And then we should do this. That'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
And then we should build that right there. And then how about
Right.
this idea right here? You know, let's go on for 10, 20, 30 years until they make
Right.
until they get to the grave.
Right.
All right. And then you have folks who actually have systems in place actually doing something.
Right.
So we want to get to the systems in place. All right. But yeah, so we want to make sure that our culture is in the forefront of everything that we do. That's your lens. That's how you see the world.
Mm-hmm.
You see, you can't eat without seeing culture on the plate.
Right.
So that's plate is the sun god Ra.
Right.
And that spoon is the moon. And they have 4 children, which you call Haru, Set, Nephilis, and Aset. So you have the 4 prongs of the spoon who represent north, south, east, and west. You see, so Eden is a spiritual communion.
Wow.
But if I look at food as a objective reality, then I say, feed me,
Yeah.
make me strong,
Mm-hmm.
you know, give me nourishment, whatever. So I've just not created an objective reality.
Mm-hmm.
So now I've created a slave master relationship between food.
Food.
You see.
Okay.
Now, what happens with that is when you subscribe to that, you're going to be just stuck into this prison. Because, see, the thing to understand is that you were never the body. Never. The reason we became a slave is when we start to subscribe to the body, which locks you into this prison, which actually enslaves you spiritually first, and then the residual effect of that is physical slavery, you see. So when you subscribe to the illusion, then you are confounded to the illusion. So if I think this food tastes good, if this food right here tastes good, then a bullet can harm me. I'll say it again. If this food tastes good, then this bullet can harm me because I've subscribed to it.
Okay.
You see? So when you subscribe to one thing on the matrix, you subscribe to everything. You see? So we have to make sure that we are in our spiritual right mind first.
Okay.
Your mother got upset with you. She said you're not in your right mind. That we are essentially right-minded people. You see. So she would get that switch, right? The switch you from bad behavior to good behavior.
Okay.
That's why I call it switch.
Okay.
So that's what she called it the switch for. You
Mm-hmm.
see. So we're more African than what we think. You know, when they jump the broom during weddings, and before you go to bed, you don't want your shoes to point towards the bed. You want them pointing outside the bed. That's African. That's what African things we did. So
it's in our DNA.
It's in our DNA. It's epigenetic, you see. And so we have to make sure that we're not just divorcing ourselves from anybody on the continent. We are a B1. We call that black first. You see. So first frequency is connected to all the melanated people on the planet. You see. So we're the first here. We're the first in Europe. We're the first in South America. We're first in that. We're first everywhere. So that conversation becomes moot at a certain point. It doesn't matter because we've been on the planet too long to not be everywhere. You see. So it's not a place that is that we were not. Okay. So the whole thing about, we're not from there or from Africa, the thing is that's coming from the root race ideology that was started by, we're talking about Helena Blavatsky, who was Adolf Hitler's teacher. And she talked about the Pelorian race, and the Pelorian race gave birth to the Hyperborean race. And the Hyperborean race gave birth to the Lemurians, and the Lemurians gave birth to the Atlanteans. Okay. So this is all a made-up story, though. So, so she said that the Lemurians, coming from Lemur, they took the LE. They call themselves the Moors. See? So they said the Moors gave birth to the Atlanteans, and the Atlantic Ocean's over there. So therefore, we came from the Atlantic part of the planet. You see. So therefore, we was already over there. We was already over here. And therefore, we're not them. See? So, doing that, you'll see that the Atlanteans and the indigenous, and nothing wrong with the word indigenous per se, it's just the fact that when people divorce themselves from Africa, what they'll see is that they have a lot of ascended master ideology, like the teachers of Thoth and all these types of, the Emerald Tablets type. They all talk about the same things. And that's coming from the Atlantean ideology and the Lemurian ideology. So when that idea was constructed, it made people think that they were already over here. But see, the Ice Age happened 10,000 years ago and just melted. So there was no one over here 10,000 years ago. You know, unless you were frozen. And then you get thawed out and you start walking around. But I mean, but from this making sense, people died. If they're over here, they died at that point, you see. But the thing is, the people who are following that is what they're saying is that they're not related to the African. So if you're not related to the African, then that means that it can only mean one thing. It means that you're two different species. If you have no relationship to the African, that means you're two different species. That's all it can mean. So you're saying the black people here have no genetic information. None. You said zero, right? Zero.
Just completely disconnected.
Completely. It's completely two different species.
Okay.
That's all you can be saying.
That makes sense to you.
That makes sense to them.
I don't know about all that.
I ain't got
okay.
I ain't got no Africa and zero.
Right.
I mean, that's what's being said today. And then people follow it. Okay.
Why don't, because I mean, I'm not saying everybody subscribes to this, but what's so wrong with saying black? Like, if I say you're black, I know you're not the shade of black.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, so why is that? What's the issue with
because that? They only speak one language. That's why.
Okay.
They don't realize the word, the first Chinese in the China call themselves black. They don't realize the Kashites, which means black, in India. They don't realize that the Kemetic people call themselves black. They all mean black because it had nothing to do with skin tone. Even when you write the word black or Kemet in the Meta-Netra, you have to write the glyph, the charcoal, which is black. So that tells you the charcoal is black. It's not, you know. So it's like this stuff is so funny to me, but it's like for some reason when I say it in ancient Egyptian, I say it in Indian language or Hindi language. If I say it in Mandarin, it's okay. But if I say black in English, it's bad. All we were saying is that the universe sits in this black substance, and the most of the universe is consumed or composed of blackness. So we are the essence of that. So therefore, we come from that. So we're saying that we are more of that which is. That's all we're saying.
That's beautiful.
That's all we're saying.
I would never want to disconnect from that term.
Exactly. They want to make it seem like it's a curse word today. So I can't even say certain words on social media now because I get
like, you're not black.
attacked. You're not black. It says in this Black Law Dictionary, this means white. You know.
Yeah.
Do something. What you doing? You're a keyboard warrior. You know, they're going to be on keyboard warriors talking about this and that. And it's silly at this point. The main ones doing all that talking have too much time on their hands to check people. They're not doing nothing besides talking.
Yeah.
All we're saying is we're more of that which is. We call it being spiritual. Spiral.
Yeah.
You hear spirals. So we can retrieve information from spirit to physical, just like that, instantaneously. So when you have a lack of melanin, you can't retrieve information back from spirit to here. So it's a distortion there. So you need religion as a medium to connect that. You see. So we don't need religion. Religion is something you have to rely on. The first 4 letters say rely. You have to rely on something. And that religioso is an army. That was an army name that started this whole stuff about subscribing to a certain way of thinking. That's the whole objective reality thing, right? Ism. When I say I'm right and you're wrong, and you're right, I'm wrong, that means I have the object, or either I don't have the object. That means that if I'm right, then you have to be wrong. So therefore, I had to create some type of ism to make me seem superior.
Right.
So that's what we call dichotomous logic, you see. So dichotomous logic gives birth to all isms, meaning that you have to be wrong and I have to be right. So we can't maintain our highest value, which is a relationship, you see. So we get on these little scuffles, folks who subscribe to being conscious, using the same axiology as their oppressor, who they say they don't want to be oppressed by. It doesn't make any sense.
It's backwards.
So you're using the value system of your oppressor to say that I'm wrong, and you're going to say that you're conscious. Therefore, you're just deteriorating the highest value, which is the relationship for us. So you can't get out the box. Either you're going to be black or not. Either you're going to be African centered or not. And just you can't have both. You can't serve two masters. You can't be indigenous and African centered and have a European axiology. You can't do it.
Dr. Chow, where do you? Who taught you? Like where? What? Who? Where? What? like how?
Well, I mean, as you know, Dr. Advocate, I lived with him for a little bit. But I mean, I pulled from a lot of teachers, a lot of ancestors. Just channeling mainly. I learn from everybody. One thing about a good teacher or anybody is they're usually great students. I could listen. I could shut up and listen. Some folks got to talk the whole time and got to say something every time you say something, and they got to talk and talk, talk, talk. That's typically not a good listener. Mm-hmm. I know how to sit down and shut up and listen.
Yeah.
Not just listening, actively listening, putting parts together, taking notes when someone says something, connecting that may come up 3 years later in what I said. You see, and connecting the dots. And over time, it becomes like spiritual kung fu. You get better at it. You see, and but yeah, I just stand on their shoulders. You know, a lot of the greats, a lot of our great teachers that I learned from, and I just try to apply it. But you know, life is the best teacher, of course. I try to make sure that what I'm studying fits in. You see,
yeah.
They call that Brown's paradox, meaning that it works in theory, but it doesn't work in practicality. We don't want to get into Brown's paradox, you see, meaning that 1 + 1 = 2. It doesn't always equal 2. Mm-hmm. You see, because math is the language for science, and science is a way of thinking. Science means the essence of someone's psyche. Sciences, you see, it's the essence of psychology. You see, so you can't have art without science. You can't have science without art. So I try to bring those two together. So that's my hand, my ambidextrous come back to nature. Right. If I hear something intellectual, I have to give life to it. You see, so every time I hear something that's just logical, I have to connect spirit with it. You see, I have to connect those two every time I listen. So I actively listen. I connect a lot of dots, and then I put it into practice, and I see if it works or not. You see, I see. Okay, this person said they like the color green. Green is their favorite color, and green is related to lust. All right. So I may ask this person, your favorite color is green, right? Oh, you must have lust issues. Oh, how'd you know that? Oh, I didn't know. I was based off my studying. Right. It said it could be true. Oh, this person wears a lot of purple all the time. They're hiding behind religion. Oh. So I was like, okay. So I'll have a consultation. Dr. I wear a lot of purple. And they may reveal that they like to hide behind religion. They tell themselves. So I start using my clients as data. Okay. You see, to make sense of what I have studying. So I have secondary research, which is studying, and primary research. See, so I use both. Some people are stuck in secondary research, which is fine. Mm-hmm. Secondary research is okay. You just have to make sure that you have to make sure that you're healthy to receive it. Mm-hmm. Because we have something called the amino acids of truth, which is phenylalanine, which turns into tyrosine. Tyrosine converts to serotonin. Serotonin creates melatonin. If I don't eat correctly or my body tempo is not healthy, then those amino acids misfire and they create false positives. What's true would be false, and what's false is true. So they create a false positive in the brain. So I can't even study now because everything I see that's true, I negate it, and that which is false, I accept it. Mm-hmm. So it requires you to be healthy to even study correctly. You see, we call it amino acids of truth. So those amino acids not being converted properly into the following sequence, then you're going to be skewed in what you even perceive as being reality. Mm-hmm. You see, and part of being aware is being able to distinguish between the spiritual reality and the physical illusion. You see, if you don't do that, then you're going to be stuck in this prism. You're going to be stuck in the tricks of the material world. Mm-hmm. The matrix, mm-hmm. You see, and therefore you'll fall victim to any new trend, any new doctrine that comes out. Remember, this whole indigenous thing is about 5 years old. People just start jumping on this bandwagon. What were they before? But they want to say the age of Aquarius things is coming out now, so they use that as a scapegoat to say that, oh, now it's the age of Aquarius, brother. We get this information now. There's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
The sun rises in the east. Civilization starts in the east. That's just what the planet does. I'm sorry. So I mean, but we have to make sure that we're not subscribing to just something that just pops up out of the blue. Make sure you do your own study. Don't be a parrot out here. You know, I don't just parrot people. I go make sure I hear it and I catalog it for future reference. I hear it and I catalog it for future reference. If it doesn't gel with you, then just write it down or make note of it mentally and say, let me look a bit further into that and see if that makes sense. And that's how you start to build up your voice. You see, that's how you build up your intellect, because it's a muscle you have to exercise. Your head grows, like your brain is still developing 3 years after you're born, but it's too big to get to the mother's cervix. But a cow's brain in relation to his body is very small. So if you're not being breastfed properly, or you're jumping into cow's milk, then what happens to the brain in relation to the size of that species? You see, because see, the brain has to have certain hormones that are going to be needed from the mother's breast milk. But see, the thing is, if the baby's deficient in something, its sucking process will be at a different rate, which will bring different hormones and amino acids to it, so that it can get anything it's deficient in. You see, that's not present in cow's milk. So therefore, the insula and cingulate part of the brain doesn't reach full maturity, which is how you maintain a relationship. Because if the placenta is too large, that means there's too much fat in it to begin with. That means most of the nutrients went into the placenta and not into the baby. Therefore, the placenta represents opposites, meaning that the child will not be able to get along with its opposite. You see? So just by looking at the birth process and the weaning on the breast milk, we can tell how well someone will be in a relationship. Just from that. You see? Because see, the mother is actually controlling the rate and speed of development of the womb of the baby based off the nutritional content of her. So if she's devoid of nutrients, then she's going to slow the trajectory of the child's ability to mature. You see? So what happens is his ratio of growth will be synonymous to that of a cow, which is a smaller brain in relation to his body, or not fully developed. So what that means is his body will grow anatomically, but his brain will still be that of a boy.
Wow.
That's why we say you're born a male, you become a boy, but you must learn to become a man. You don't just become a man at 18 or whatever, you know. Or the Europeans use all these teen words because we didn't have teens, but they said you get these in between years. They call them teenagers. They take the W off and call it teenagers.
Right.
Yeah, that's how they do it, teenager. Right? You got these in between years, between 13 and 19. Those are the between you. Between what? In our culture, you're a man and a woman at 12. You count. And when your grandma get mad at you, she say you are no count. That means you don't count, because the worst thing in our community is not physical death. The worst thing in our community is social castration. It goes back to the relationship.
Right.
You see?
Right.
So to be exiled was the worst thing for us. So we wanted to make sure that we mattered. We make sure that we counted. We make sure we're doing our part in the community. You see? So the axiology is still the same. No matter you from Zimbabwe or Ghana, or you from Mississippi.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. The axiology is still the same.
Right.
That way we're not divorcing ourselves from, B1 people, black first. I always say B1. B1's first frequency. Take back your first frequency energy. You see? Fourth frequency sometimes can jump up to first frequency, because they can say, I don't want to be like third frequency. I don't want to be like second frequency. I'm a slingshot. I mean, I've seen that happen before. But first frequency is who you are. You see, first you have to have first frequency consciousness. You see, that means you're attaching culture to everything you do. Everything you do. And from there, you'll see that you get healthier, and then you'll start to repair your culture.
Right. Wow. I'm just, you already know how I go. I'm just sitting over here just processing everything. Because what do you want to leave everybody with? Like, is there a message? Like, was there a lesson that kind of shifted your perspective on life that a teacher shared with you, or just something that you learned that, you feel like sharing it would help, like the greater good?
I see, different people, they work 9 to 5 jobs, and whether they're mentally stable or not, I don't know. That's up to them. But I have noticed that our people have to do something that's spiritually aligned to us to stay in our sanity. So a lot of our mental health issues are coming from being out of alignment from that. Now, other people can make money doing other stuff and whatever. I see that as almost a necessity for those two to be align each other as much as possible.
Yeah.
As much as possible, just to keep your sanity. Because if not, you're gonna go do racial battle fatigue, and you're gonna go do a lot of the residual effects of just being here, which are like adverse environmental feedback, right? Mm-hmm. And so before you can have your culture, you gotta have good agriculture, which nourishes your culture. And no matter what circumstance you were born in, He's called your father because he wants you to go further. You see, so you're supposed to go farther than your father. You see, that's why he's called a father. So don't get stuck in what family's trying to put you into a box. They may not be able to see what you're doing, but the word is in itself. Go further than your father, and you'll be good. The ancestors have your back. They'll make sure you're taken care of, because they do support anything righteous that you're doing. So I always put culture first. Make sure that you're as healthy as possible, so you can give that. Make sure you have love here first,
right?
So you can express proper love. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna give you a donut because I love you,
right?
Right? Because now it doesn't make sense. It doesn't correspond. So any love that doesn't include self is partial love. So some people just give all day, but they just forget themselves too. Yeah. That's still partial.
Right.
That's still partial love. So it has to be holistic. It has to be here and there. See? So therefore, you want to connect everything. So Europeans are this, are that. We are this and that. We can unify everything. We connect everything. So we don't have ors. We have and. So the truth is not in what you say or what I say. It's always in between, which holds the highest value, which is our relationship.
Wow. Well, I know you like to keep your life real low key, but how can people, like, if they want to book a consultation, if they want to, well, first of all, the food here at Jamoto Sunfire Cuisine is phenomenal. So it's in downtown Concord. If you're trying to, eat food that's going to give you real life. So your restaurant is here, but if someone wants to book a consultation or learn more about you or learn more from you, how can we get connected with Dr. Tao?
I'm pretty busy, but you can email me at tkmkweli@gmail.com. That's tkmkweli, so tkmkweli@gmail.com. That'd be a quicker way to reach me, but if not, you can go to my website, Dr. Tao, doctor spelled out TAU.com. I post on TikTok regularly. I do have some videos on YouTube. If you're a local, you can come by the restaurant. I may chat with you if I have some time.
Yeah.
Some people try to call a restaurant and ask a question. If you have a quick question, go at it. But
be mindful.
But be mindful that I do have
don't be disrespectful.
Yeah. Because I
want my food.
Yeah, I know, right? Sometimes it is a wait. So, but you can call for a quick second if you have a question. But try to keep it 2 minutes or less. Well, I used to be more accessible than I am now, but I'll still talk to you. I'm not, I'm not bougie.
Right. He's not. He's not. Just a little bit. I thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for your knowledge, for all that you do in the community. Yeah. I give you so much thanks.
I appreciate you, Renee. So. Thank you. I'm happy for your channel. I'm excited. I'm excited about it. So good. So I appreciate it.
All right, y'all. We're signing out.
All right, peace.